Welcome to the Week 13 wrap-up here at this 15th season of Blood, Sweat, and Beers. Today's recap is brought to you by the letters X, Y, Z, and E, and the number 1. Let's take a quick look at the scoreboard from this past week. Our first game, Our second game that we can take a look at, Puzzles versus Gloop. Puzzles did what he needed to do, 145 points, nice, and we kind of question whether our assumed number 1 team is really the assumed number 1 team anymore. Gloop had a serious stumble, and it wasn't because of a significant number of bye week players. It was just a rough week. 2 goose eggs posted on his starting roster, and a pretty meager performance by Austin Eckler, 4.7 points. So broke 100, but losing by 40 points is not what we've come to expect. And that's we'll have to see. Is this just an anomaly, or is this really unfortunate timing as we get into playoff time for our number 1 team to stumble just a little bit? We'll have to see. Aaron took care of business. He's off gallivanting around, and he was able to stamp his ticket. We'll talk about the standings and the playoffs here in just a minute, but no surprise here. Wins by nearly 60 against Ertz. Kind of what we expected, I suppose. Poncho, he's got his mojo going. He definitely is turning it on at the right time. After that big deep dive into all the numbers last week, I think Poncho took it somewhat personally and decided to just show up. 171 points, while not the top scorer of the week or his top scorer of the season. Significant win there. 24 points over Light Rail, who actually had a decent showing. Team showed up fairly well, 137, but it was just not enough. He continues to stumble, slides himself out of the playoffs. Does Poncho become the team to beat? He is now 9-4, tied with Gloop for the top record in the league, and he is scoring a lot of points here over the past month. So is he got the hot hand, the hot schedule, or the hot roster going into the playoffs? Starting to look that way. But the two of them have an opportunity to duke it out a little bit for nothing more than bragging rights in this next week, and I'll mention that here in just a minute. So, Jersey Birds and Who Dat. Now this was not good. This was an interesting one. You guys are starting to really slip. No one's taking care of business here and making good on the goal that we all had of keeping Keith out of the playoffs. He's currently the number 6 seed, although that's not locked in. We'll talk about that in a minute. But we'll give Ian a pass because he had everybody else on bye other than his starting 9. So he had 8 players that were not playing on bye week, didn't even have a game scheduled, including the 2 in his IR spot. So let's call that an anomaly. Let's say the Jersey Birds is going to show back up next week and help take care of business. So we'll see here. That's the scoreboard as we saw it. Now let's take a quick look at the standings. So here's where we get into our letters being more important than our numbers. If we take a quick look across the East and the West here, we'll see that, the letter X. Several players stamped their ticket, whether they won or lost, just by virtue of other teams losing or winning. So we see that Aaron, the Commish, and Puzzles all stamped their ticket. They've got X's by their name. They have made the playoffs. We look at Y's and Z's. We look at division winners and securing the first round bye. Gloop and Poncho got their Y's and their Z's. The other letter that this recap is brought to you by is the letter E. Unfortunately, 2 more E's showed up this week. Ertz, Light Rail Coyote. Despite others losing, it is not possible for them to make the playoffs. So 3 teams now eliminated from the playoffs. That brings us to our number that this week's recap is brought to us by the number 1. That is 1 more playoff spot yet to be determined. And that comes down to Who Dat versus Jersey Birds. Now, they aren't playing each other. That would make it a whole lot easier. It's a more complicated scenario, unfortunately. With a win and a Jersey Birds loss, or a Jersey Birds loss, either one of those things, Who Dat, Keith, gets into the playoffs. I can't believe I'm saying that. That's so absurd. Jersey Birds can make it in by winning and by nature of a Who Dat loss. And they would be tied then at 6 and 8. But Jersey Birds owns the second tiebreak because of points scored. They've split their games, but Jersey Birds would win the playoff or win the tiebreak, get into the playoffs as the number 6 seed. So, first order of business, Kamish has to take care of business against Who Dat again this week. Also, Jersey Birds has to beat Aaron. While that's not an easy task, Jersey Birds has been able to post 170 points, so it's very possible. But as you can see by the percentages, it is highly likely that we are going to see Keith back in the playoffs. I don't even know what to say about that. Well, those are the 2 big games to watch. We'll be pulling for Jersey Birds, and I always pull for the Commish. Enjoy week 14.